Hi, and welcome to cookwithtom.com. The fall season is just about upon us. And what that means is we'll have fantastic root vegetables available in our local supermarkets. Everyone knows what to do with a potato or with a carrot. But today we're going to take something that's a little not known as well, the turnip. In fact, a few weeks ago, a friend of mine said, "Tom, I planted this garden. I've got potatoes and carrots and onions and turnips. My wife at the first of the year told me, don't plant turnips." And so now at the time he's like, no problem. I know what, we'll be able to make great dishes with turnips, part of the radish family. Imagine them sliced up over salads. Well, there's a problem. It's the end of the year and he's got to come up with some dishes to figure out what to do with this thing. So today we're going to spend some time talking about the turnip, and we're going to make a root vegetable bisque that's going to knock your socks off. In front of me I've compiled 5 root vegetables. Some of them you'll see year-round, such as garlic and shallots, and some of them, although they are available year-round, are best this time of year in the fall. I've got a yam, turnip, and lastly, one of my favorite root vegetables, the leek. What we're going to do is we're going to take these two vegetables, the yam and the turnip. We're going to chop these up and we're going to put these in the oven at 400 degrees. Our goal is to get browning on these. When vegetables, meat, anything browns, essentially what happens is the chemical reaction creates hundreds of different flavors that you can't ordinarily get. It brings depth, it brings a rustic flavor to the soup we're going to make that there's no way you could get if you just chopped them up and threw them in boiling water. As you peel into these turnips, you'll smell a lot, essentially a radish smell. The reason that is the radish and the turnip both share a similar oil. So by peeling into it, you're releasing this scent of that oil. One thing to keep in mind is that the smaller the turnip, the less of that oil there is, and the better your bisque is going to be. So as you're chopping, or to my friend, if you're pulling them out of the ground, try to pull them out while they're still relatively small, because by doing so you'll end up with an easier product to eat. Do it too long and it actually starts to taste more and more like horseradish. There are 2 types of browning that go on that are beneficial in the kitchen. The first one is caramelization. The second one is called the Maillard reaction. Now, there are other browning, other ways to brown food. Like, for example, if you left this out for too long, the enzymes would break down and it would cause the skin to get brown on the outside. But what we want is the Maillard reaction. We want Maillard because it occurs at a lower temperature and it's easier to get to and still creates a lot of great flavor compounds. Caramelization, although it does create great flavor compounds, it occurs at higher temperatures, and so you can get more charring and discoloration of your food. The problem with Maillard requires a carbohydrate and a protein. These things are full of carbohydrates, but they're not that heavy on protein. So what we'll do is we'll add just a little bit of extra virgin olive oil and toss these vegetables. This is 2 yams and 4 turnips. We'll toss these all together, and that will allow the carbohydrates from the root vegetables to mix with the protein of the olive oil, so we'll get Maillard. We've tossed our root vegetables in some olive oil, we put them in a pan, and getting ready to throw them in the oven. Cooking through is not going to be that important for these because we're going to be boiling later on to finish the cooking process. All we're worried about at this point is browning. So I've got the oven set at 400, I've got the oven rack on the top shelf. You could even broil these if you wanted to and really crank up the heat. Again, we just want to get them nice and brown. While our other root vegetables are broiling in the oven, we're going to work on the next step. We're going to get this ready so that when those come out, we'll be ready to move on. I've got a shallot and I've got some garlic. I'll take the shallot and I'll cut it up, not too fine of a chop. Now you may have noticed too with the other root vegetables, I didn't really chop them up in that consistent of a shape. Not that important for this recipe because later on we're just going to be popping it in a food processor and pureeing it all anyway. So not necessarily that important. But we're going to chop up our shallot, we're going to chop up our garlic, and we're going to add them to the pan. Alright, so I've chopped up 2 shallots and 3 cloves of garlic. I'm getting ready to add these to the oil. Oh, why the goggles, you ask? Well, back when I was in the restaurant business, I used to chop up probably 50 pounds of onions on a given day to make French onion soup.
And you can throw onions in the fridge, you can do all sorts of things, but really the only effective way to keep from crying while you're cutting onions is these bad boys.
These roasted for about 30 minutes. Now it's going to be different with your oven because each oven's a little different and you'll see fluctuations in temperatures as high as 25 degrees from oven to oven. But I did a little science experiment and I want to show it to you. You see this whole turnip right here? You notice how there's no browning on it whatsoever? Even though it was about a ½ inch closer to the burner than this other stuff, I didn't put any olive oil on this. And so you'll see that this stuff that got olive oil started to get brown. In fact, you got lots of great browning going on here because of the combination between the carbohydrates and the protein. Just carbohydrates? Ow, that's hot. Carbohydrates and protein. The garlic and the shallots have had a chance to sit in this olive oil for about 5 minutes. They've softened up, started to turn translucent, and are just getting a hint of brown on there. This is the perfect time to add our roasted root vegetables and some chicken stock. I add the root vegetables very first because if I add the chicken stock to the hot oil, I have splatters all over the place. I'm going to let the onions, garlic, yams, and turnips simmer in some chicken stock for 30 minutes or so until the middle of the turnips and the yams start to show that they're cooked all the way through. One thing that's important to remember, the only thing you should ever boil in the kitchen is noodles. Particularly in this dish, we want to bring it up to it's just almost boiling, put a lid on it, turn the heat down, and let it simmer. We've got a really nice simmer going on over here. Before I cover it, I'm going to throw in about 5 bay leaves and some fresh tarragon. Before I put the tarragon in though, I want to crush it just a little bit because that's going to help to release a lot of the oils that come through the tarragon. I love this herb. It's got this nice licoricey flavor. Smells so good. It's similar to anise or fennel. In fact, there is some of the oils in French tarragon that are shared in common with basil. So that same kind of spicy, licoricey smell that you get from basil, anise, fennel also exists here in tarragon.